Nobody else is here.
It is a public park.
Oh my god, he has a gun.
Don't move!
What's up, beautiful people? I'm Zach, and you're watching Zach Makes Movies, the channel where we talk about...
You guessed it, Frank Stallone.
Today I wanted to talk about one of my favorite films. It's kind of what we do on this channel. But I've been doing a little too much comedy, so I thought I'd take a break and talk about David Fincher's masterpiece, Zodiac.
This is the murderer of the two teenagers last Christmas at Lake Herman and the girl on the 4th of July near the golf course in Vallejo.
Zodiac is based on a true story, one of the most infamous unsolved serial killer cases in American history. There's been a couple of different times that it's been claimed to have been solved. Who really knows? Who can say for certain? All I know is it's a damn good movie. David Fincher is a brilliant director. He made a bunch of great movies. But Zodiac is easily my favorite. It's got an incredible cast: Robert Downey Jr., Mark Ruffalo, the first team-up of the Avengers before the Avengers. You got Jake Gyllenhaal playing Robert Graysmith, who wrote the book, Chloe Sevigny playing his girlfriend, and John Carroll Lynch as Arthur Lee Allen, who to this day is still many people's #1 suspect as the Zodiac Killer. And the movie is very true to the book. It's actually known as being one of the most true-to-life, true crime story films ever made. John Carroll Lynch, who was famous as the sweet, dopey husband in Fargo, he also played the clown in American Horror Story. There's a scene in American Horror Story that is very, very similar to a famous scene in Zodiac.
I want your money and your car keys.
Okay. We're not gonna do anything, okay? We're gonna cooperate.
Here's the keys. Don't get up.
The man at one point asks him, "Hey, did you really have any bullets in the gun?" And the killer shows him. Before he ends up viciously stabbing them. But that's an incredible scene. One of the creepiest scenes in a movie, and it's all the creepier knowing that it really did happen. Something that's very interesting that David Fincher did in the making of Zodiac is, because the murder was, at least at the time, completely unsolved, in all of the different scenes where you get to witness the Zodiac's killings, or you hear his voice, he used different actors who were different suspects in the movie to portray that, so that you wouldn't go, "Hey, that sounds a lot like John Carroll Lynch," even though I really felt like it sounded like him the entire movie. Other scenes that were true to life: another couple is on a date in a car.
How can people have no feeling?
Do you want me to tell him to leave?
Stay in the car.
And the Zodiac comes up, shines his brights at them. They think it's the cops at first.
It's your wallet. Man, you really creeped us out.
I believe the guy survived. I think that was the guy, if I'm remembering correctly, I think that's the guy who identified Arthur Lee Allen at the end of the movie. Robert Downey Jr. is fantastic in the film. I know we've talked about Robert Downey Jr. as recently as our last video, unless I put out the David Lynch one first, which I probably will. Never mind.
Sergeant Paul Avery from the San Francisco Chronicle. I just want to check if you had an unsolved firearm-related homicide on Christmas and maybe one on July 4th.
The relationship between Mark Ruffalo and Robert Downey Jr.'s characters is part of what drives the film. It's a very fun dynamic, but what really makes the story interesting is Jake Gyllenhaal's character, Robert Graysmith, who ended up writing the book. Robert Graysmith is a cartoonist at the paper, but he's obsessed with codes and ciphers. So after each murder, the Zodiac would take credit for it and send a letter into the police with details that only the killer would know.
Would you read that, please?
I want you to print this cipher on the front page of your paper. In this cipher is my identity.
And Robert Graysmith was instrumental in figuring out that cipher, which they eventually published so that the public could help them figure it out. And a couple people did help the police solve the cipher. One of my favorite scenes in the movie is when they bring in Arthur Lee Allen for questioning.
Mr. Allen, Inspector Dave Tosky and Sergeant Jack Mullinax. We're investigating the Zodiac murders in San Francisco and Vallejo.
And they have him sitting there. Now this is just a testament to the genius of David Fincher.
I told him that I'd gone to Salt Point that weekend to skin dive. Also, that day when I came home, my neighbor saw me. It was around 4. He died a week or so afterwards. Heart attack, so I didn't think to call to follow up.
At one point, the investigators notice that Arthur Lee Allen is wearing a watch.
That's a nice watch.
Thank you.
May I see it? Where'd you get it?
It's a Christmas gift from my mother 2 years ago.
Now, he already seems incredibly suspicious. He already fits the bill.
The knives I had in my car with the blood on them, that blood came from a chicken that I killed for dinner.
And now you have this scene where everything he says seems to point to him as the killer. And yet there's no hard evidence to put him away. And everything in that scene is real. Every single element of that scene is real. The shoes he's wearing, the watch, and what he says at the end is truly chilling.
I'm not the Zodiac. And if I was, I certainly wouldn't tell you.
At one point, the Zodiac called into a TV program and spoke on live air about his crimes.
Who am I speaking with?
This is the Zodiac speaking.
Is there something I can call you that's a little less ominous?
I'm gonna kill them.
Fantastic.
David Fincher is a brilliant director. He does such a phenomenal job of depicting it as realistically and true to life as possible. Throughout the film, there's no flashy cinematography. There's nothing that takes you out of it. It all feels almost like a documentary. You have fun character dynamics. It really does feel like a movie. It's a really fun movie. Jake Gyllenhaal's character is kind of losing his mind throughout the film. He's getting so obsessed with the case, as did Robert Downey Jr., as did Mark Ruffalo. And throughout the film, you get to watch, as the years go on, these people just go deeper and deeper and deeper, and all the while getting no closer to solving it. One thing that this movie does so well, that you see a lot in slashers and murder mystery films, Scream kind of did it the best. What Wes Craven did so spectacularly with Scream is that he made it plausible that every single character in the movie might be the killer. And similarly, David Fincher does something in Zodiac where characters that aren't even suspects start to become very suspicious. There's a whole side plot with Philip Baker Hall, who's playing a handwriting expert who is supposed to be making a determination on these letters to try to match the handwriting to the suspects. And throughout the film, the investigators are sort of questioning him whether or not he is actually doing his job correctly. And later on in the film, it's mentioned that he actually has become an alcoholic and they don't necessarily know if they can trust his judgment anymore. So it makes you question some of the things he said earlier in the movie. But at one point, Robert Graysmith is obsessively trying to solve the case on his own. He speaks to a guy played by Charles Fleischer who was involved with the making of movie posters. And Graysmith goes to his house on a dark, rainy night, invites himself in, and starts talking to this guy about why he believes that he now knows that this one particular person is the person who was responsible for that handwriting. And he's positive now that the person who wrote on these posters is the killer. Only for the guy he's talking to say,
Mr. Graysmith, I do the posters myself. It's my handwriting.
And so suddenly, even though he was never a suspect, Robert Graysmith is immediately questioning whether this guy he's talking to is the Zodiac.
Why don't I just find out when we play that film?
Well, that's all right.
It's not a problem. They're just down in the basement.
And Charles Fleischer leads him down to the basement. And there's a nice little moment where, you know, basements are very uncommon in California, so anyone that has a basement is inherently a little bit suspicious in a movie like this.
Not many people have basements in California.
I do.
Against his better judgment, Robert Graysmith follows him down to this basement and becomes this incredibly tense scene. It's weirdly one of the tensest scenes in the movie, even though there's no actual reason to believe this guy is the killer other than this recent admission that he was actually the one that was writing on these posters. So that's a very famous scene, and Robert Graysmith suddenly becomes flustered and scared and rushes up the stairs to escape from the house. By the end of the film, we don't have an answer as to who the Zodiac is. He was never caught. Arthur Lee Allen at this point has died. And so if it was him, which many people still to this day believe it was, it's never proven and he is not able to be brought to justice. The adult version of this young survivor from the car shooting is played by Jimmy Simpson from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and he is shown photographs of Arthur Lee Allen and some other men.
It's him. It's this man.
He identifies with certainty Arthur Lee Allen is the man that he saw on that fateful night. So the film ends with a witness claiming that he believes it was Arthur Lee Allen, and he's positive of that.
Last time I saw this face was July 4th, 1969. I am very sure that's the man who shot me.
When the movie came out in 2007, there was no more information than that. And that was sort of where the case had ended. So David Fincher, knowing that we don't actually have an answer to this murder mystery, cleverly ended the movie on the note of a witness pointing at this one very suspicious person and saying, I think it was him. So even though we don't have an answer at the end of the film, we're at least satisfied by the ending. Anyone who watches this movie is going to say Arthur Lee Allen is the killer. This guy is so creepy. He's clearly a criminal. And there's just too many coincidences between the shoes and the watch and the blood and the criminal history and the fact that he spoke to his friend about killing people, the book that he's obsessed with. It's just, it all adds up and it's just too obvious that it's him. So David Fincher gives us what we want at the end of this movie, which is at least enough of a reason to believe that it was this particular person that we can walk away from the film satisfied, even if the crime was not solved. Now, in the last few years, apparently, the crime has been solved. The guy that they claim it was is also dead, so no justice for anybody and no official definitive ending, but apparently it's been solved. Kind of a lame ending in real life, but this was a very strange series of crimes. There were murders that the police weren't sure whether they were related or not, that they kind of went back and forth on whether it was the Zodiac or whether it was an unrelated series of murders, but ultimately, apparently it's been solved. Still, I go back and watch this movie as often as I can. I love David Fincher. I'm a big fan of his films, but this one is absolutely my favorite. Seven is brilliant. Gone Girl's brilliant. Social Network is brilliant. All very different, but the guy knows what he's doing. No question about it. He's a very efficient filmmaker, and there's no frills. Generally speaking, his movies are, not to say that they're surface level, but He's not jerking you around. He wants you to know what he wants you to know. And he makes that very clear throughout the film, in the cinematography, the pacing, in every reaction shot to every character. He knows exactly what he wants you to think, and that's the mark of a good director. If you're interested in learning more about this case, I highly recommend checking out the book by Robert Graysmith. It's really fantastic and incredibly creepy. The true life accounts that he was able to track down over years are chilling and absolutely fascinating. If that's your kind of thing, I definitely recommend taking a look at that book, Zodiac by Robert Graysmith. And definitely give the movie a watch if you haven't seen it. It's one of my favorites, and it is one of the most true to life true crime films ever made. So I think David Fincher deserves a lot of credit for that. What he does not deserve credit for is making season 3 of Mindhunter, which has been promised to us so many goddamn times that I just don't believe it anymore. It's not happening. It's clearly not happening. And it's a damn shame, because I think that he could make it happen if he really wanted to, but it's just a lot of work. I understand. I mean, to get all those actors together again, it's tough, and for someone like David Fincher to be put into the box of television, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work for anyone, but for a director like him who is so detail-oriented, I think it's probably a lot more work than any of us even understand. But man, was Mindhunter fantastic. Outside of Zodiac, Mindhunter is my favorite David Fincher project, and it is actually the most similar to Zodiac of all of his other projects. Season 1 in particular, just absolutely genius. So check out Mindhunter, check out Zodiac if you haven't seen it, check out Seven, check out Gone Girl, and check out The Social Network to remind you what a dickhead Mark Zuckerberg is. Well, that's all I got for you today, guys. Thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe, and check out some of these other videos I got on the channel that you might like. Let me know in the comments if you have any recommendations for future videos, and we'll see you next time.